did some stuff on social justice. It was homelessness, poverty, inequality, and violence. And I was in a homelessness group, and I had to look up research about what caused homelessness, how it caused homelessness, and what we can fix about it. And then after all of that, it was like this little march we did. So it was nice.
It was interesting because they did their work in a variety of topics, homelessness, poverty, etc. And I got a lot of very tough, straightforward questions that took a lot of thought, that showed the level of engagement and awareness that these kids have about real issues that our world faces. I really felt like I was connecting with another demographic in our neighborhood that needed a voice. One of the little girls said, "Will you come to our march? We're gonna go do a demonstration about the topics, that we did today." And I said, "Sure."
I was kind of nervous because I'm thinking like people gonna be telling us we need to stop, but then after we started doing it, like people were supporting us. Like some people was yelling out their windows, blowing their horns, clapping, and taking their phones out and video, took pictures and stuff. So I felt like we got support from a lot of people in OvertheRhine.
What was amazing was just seeing the kids really take leadership. What I enjoyed was seeing like the way the community reacted, or just like, passerbys, how they reacted to the march, but then so proud of just how the students handled themselves. I think that, especially like my generation, I feel like we really sort of fear protest or being involved with something that like gets you in trouble or calls attention to you, too much. But I think that it's so great that the kids have been able to be involved with learning about protests and how constructive it can be.
I learned that I have a voice and I need to use it instead of being scared.
There's a really tremendous history of work in this neighborhood, the true work of connecting the dots between what is needed in a community, what is needed in youth, education, and activism. The process that you see at play here comes from a long kind of tradition and history of wise folks doing this work and understanding that you only get to the activism piece if you work through education. Specifically, you've got Peaslee that was born out of the fight for public education and activism. You've got a couple of Miami University programs. One of those is the residency program, and the other is the UTC program. Both of those use non-traditional educational models for how to educate university students in a specific place-based community way. You also have OvertheRhine Community Housing, which is this amazing affordable housing organization that operates 400 plus units of affordable housing and also has this beautiful program for kids who live in their housing that's an after-school art program in Children's Creative Corner. And finally, out of some of that collaboration too, the most recent Peaslee program was born called Agents of Change, which is really kind of taking some of these pieces of youth and focusing specifically on teasing them out and allowing them to flourish. UTC also has partnerships both with Peaslee specifically and Rothenberg Preparatory Academy, which is the only public elementary school in the neighborhood.
I think really good curriculum is about community as curriculum. And we use curriculum as a way to respond to the world.
The way I kind of look at the idea of a curriculum is anything that can be studied and learned about. And that's the world at large. There are sites outside of a classroom that we want to engage students in. And I think one of the driving forces behind this work is to find ways to have students engage with their community.
When I did the residency program, it was extremely life-changing. Going through it just totally shaped my worldview, made me think about a lot of things that I had never considered. And so that in itself made the semester and the year that I spent in OvertheRhine extremely powerful, and really I think has directed the choices that I've made since then.
When we started the residency program back in 2006, we thought it would be a much better way for students to learn about a community in a deeper sense by by working and serving in organizations, by developing the deep relationships, by developing the deep trust, that we thought that would be highly impactful. That we realize now was the low bar. I mean, that was a powerful thing, but it wasn't just a better way to learn about a neighborhood. They bonded with the neighborhood. You know, even someone like Amy Silver, right, who never left the neighborhood.
I studied abroad when I was in college, and when I got back to Miami University, I was in a difficult spot because I liked being in a place that was real and learning real hard things and doing work. So I got an email somehow from the architecture department at Miami about this residency program in OvertheRhine, and it was a very young program. I was only the second class that did it, and not being from Ohio, all I knew about OvertheRhine is the things I saw on the news, and I knew it was in no way the whole story. And so I was super eager to figure out, okay, what's more of this story? And I came down here my senior year of college, and I have not left. So after the residency program, I got an apartment on Republic Street and started working at the drop-in center after I graduated, and then moved over to OvertheRhine Community Housing shortly after that, and I've been around since 2007.
I did the residency program back in the fall, and I loved it, and I said I don't think I'll ever feel near 100% prepared to teach this coming fall, but that definitely prepared me.
We have seen such great success with Miami students in the regular OvertheRhine residency program that we're deeply impacted by living here and learning from people and walking with the people here and the organizations and doing work in these organizations that are serving deep need. That we thought, wow, wouldn't it be interesting to have a shorter version of an immersion for people who are professionals like teachers or healthcare providers or even corporate execs or, you know, middle management at Procter & Gamble or whatever it may be.
So we had this idea that we need to really get to know the teachers, and the teachers need to get to know the community. The whole concept that a village raises a child, and so that we felt like if teachers could go through a community journey to learn about OvertheRhine, they may better understand the social circumstances that kids might go through. That our kids are good kids, but they deal with issues that maybe while they're sitting in the classroom, they have a harder time learning because they might be hungry, or they might be experiencing homelessness, or just issues in the family because of low budget or things like that. And we felt like we really wanted our teachers to have more empathy for our children. And so we thought that one way we could go about raising awareness around that is having these teacher immersion weekends. We took teachers on a walk through the neighborhood and talked about the various resources that were here that they could possibly bring into the school.
The walk that I took with Bonnie throughout the neighborhood, and it wasn't the traditional walk that most pay money to see. It was the one that's free to everyone, if you want the true OvertheRhine picture. So that kind of opened my eyes to the issues not only that the kids was working on, but just to the genocide of the neighborhood, and how I felt that the injustice of how someone could come into a neighborhood and displace for the sake of I can. And that's how it seems to be. Like, because who I am, I can do that to you. And it's okay.
This area is undergoing pretty significant and swift development. And I know that a question that the community people had was a question to the teachers about, are you aware of these changes that are occurring? Does that have concern for you as to the types of students that you might be teaching in 5 or 10 years at Rotenberg Preparatory Academy? And if these are concerns to you, then let's talk.
I do understand finances, and I do understand business is into making money. I do understand all of that, but at what cost? And that's my issue. At what cost? And when do we stop? And going on that tour, you know, my question is when do you get a conscience to stop? When do you say, this is enough? This is enough. So those things from that tour, from walking down side streets, and looking at alleyways that used to be open, now they're locked. And if you didn't pay a certain amount for your place where you live, you can't live. Even though your back of your property might be on that alley, you're not a part of that alley.
And I think one of the positive things that came out of this was that the teachers saw firsthand the kind of changes that were happening in the neighborhood, the kind of impact that those changes were having upon their own students, as well as upon the community, and that something needs to be thought about, and that somehow needs to be brought into their classrooms. You know, that community knowledge and the changes that are occurring need to be brought into the curriculum of the school, into the pedagogy of their classroom. The idea is that when you come here to learn and walk with the people who are in struggle, who are trying to put something on the table in the name of human rights and social justice, and trying to raise questions about gentrification, and when you begin to kind of let your guard down and open up your mind and your heart to this, you are deeply impacted by that. And hopefully what students do, or what teachers would do, or what healthcare professionals would do, at the very least, they would have a deeper understanding of the complexities of these questions. I remember Aishan and his sharing his story. It was very powerful for me to hear him talk about his neighborhood and how he understands it and where it works and where it doesn't work for him. And it was a great kind of, consciousness raising for me, but it was great to see him deepening his own awareness about the neighborhood and why the issues that his class have identified, to explore for that year, where they came from, where that was important to him.
We kind of wanted to model the work that we do here to similar to Highlander. So one of the things that we did also is we brought teachers down to Highlander.
The whole model of Highlander is to bring people together out of different kinds of experiences, and the starting point is conversation. They just share stories with one another. They start looking for the patterns that come out of those stories, like, oh, that's my story too, that sort of thing. And then they, try and begin to build on that, add new knowledge as necessary, or add expertise if it's beyond the room, and then develop courses of action. And so the opportunity in our own collective development, community, people, me as an academic, some Miami students, the Rotenberg teachers, to go to that space, to have the time to be with Highlander people who help facilitate a series of conversations with us and workshops and things like that, I think deepened our own analysis about what we're doing and helped contribute to this whole project. And I think for the teachers involved, going through that first weekend residency, going to Highlander, being somewhat involved in the next residency program, I think has all been part of that whole process, and it is contributive to their own understanding of who they are as teachers and that whole teacher community connection.
I want to make it clear that people in our neighborhood have said we want development and we want things to improve in our lives. We've wanted decent, safe, affordable housing. We need more trees planted. We need good recreational spaces, decent schools. So we've been fighting for these kinds of things over the 44 years that I've been doing this work here. And so, but what happens is our little area being an historic district, it's people are coming in, buying up and raising the rents, and then we can't afford to live here. So that's what I don't like. And so I think that our city has to be intentional about if they value people living with diversity, it's not going to happen overnight automatically by letting market forces go amok.
You're tearing down things people don't grow up around. It's sad, like how you just tearing things that's a part of other people's life, and you don't care about it. So that makes me upset. I don't like that at all.
There are days that I feel like we are being occupied by power forces that have a lot more money than, say, our small grassroots groups that are trying to do quality work around affordable housing and other things, you know what I mean? So I would wish we would have a city that could value the people that I've learned to grow with, love with, play with, work with, cry with, march with, sing with, chant with, whatever. I mean, they're so beautiful. And that we are really an asset to this city if they could just see it. I mean, I think people could learn something from what we've done. And so it hurts when people do not look at us as human beings with strengths. They're only looking at how much money we have in our pockets, and that is an unfair way to judge our neighborhood.
We had conversations about this term, Econo Side. And Econo Side means something very precise. It means arranging the disappearance of people without means. Alice Gertz's book, Econo Side, Elimination of the Urban Poor, she talks about economic others, how an economy has made people other, and that therefore when they have been made other, there is no obligation that we have to them anymore. They have been removed from that universe of obligation.
The decisions that have been made have been privatized to nonprofit development corporations that have no democratic process, who have no transparency to the decisions made, and are privileged as preferred developers to take our public money for making changes in the community that impact most heavily, in my opinion, most heavily on poor people. And furthermore, destroy the democratic process of local government for all of us.
The neighborhood has been so gentrified that the stories or the perspective of the neighborhood of long-term organizing and long-term activism is not known and not acknowledged and not seen as part of the neighborhood. You know, and so now more than ever, I think getting that perspective out there and having that perspective part of the debate, you know, going forward is what keeps me moving forward.
Why are so many kids in Rothenburg, a percentage of them experiencing homelessness? I mean, it isn't because those families desired it. It's because they were at the bottom of the economic ladder, and due to racism and classism, they're having to deal with issues that a lot of people haven't had to because of their privilege.
Traditional curriculum in schools practically ignores the lived realities of kids' lives. And I think that's partly why we see some kids disengage with school. I think if we could really transform what's happening in the classrooms to be completely connected to social justice issues that especially marginalized youth are experiencing, that we could see a revolution.
To me, like, activism and education are inseparable. Like, I cannot separate the two. And, well, I have to sometimes, like for standardized testing. Will social justice help you on a standardized test? Probably not, which is really, really sad.
Part of the national discourse and rhetoric right now, and hyper-standardization that I say, is that education is being done to. And that's really not education. That, I don't learn something until I do it and I understand that I can become an active citizen. And that's the purpose of public ed, is to, become active in our democracy.
So Peasley and I think the Miami programs through the Urban Teaching Cohort, and I think the teachers that have gone through the teacher immersion, I think value that there has to be a place for kids to express themselves on issues and things that matter to them, not what our standard test or our books are saying that the kids should learn about or know about. Because I think kids get excited about education if they're learning about something that they care about.
And I love talking about issues with my kids because I do want to know where they're at and what they see and how they feel about certain things. So as much as I can bring real world situations into the classroom, I'm going to do it because I want them to be socially conscious as well. And that academics just help to back up that. It just helps to propel them to the next level. We do a program that help the Miami students in the urban teaching cohort to hopefully become better urban school teachers. And we do that through a mentoring, which means that my kids are the mentors and the UC Miami students are the mentees. And it might sound kind of strange because we're saying that, you know, we want these younger kids to mentor these college students, but if you think about it, it really isn't strange because who knows best what they need than the students themselves.
And so we asked the students, if you were going to work on something for a while, what matters to you, or what would you like to kind of find out more about? And then we went through a process of having the youth vote on and narrow down what they wanted to do. So we literally had 8 pieces of paper around the room, one representing each of the issues or the topics that they came up with. And the youth were to take their name, and they wrote on a piece of paper their name if that was their number 1 topic, their name if that was their number 2, and their name for number 3.
It helped them narrow it down to like 4 major issues that they felt was very concerning in their neighborhood: poverty, inequality, homelessness, and violence.
And the kids picked those 4 topics, and they really sketched out a plan. You know, they put all the things they thought that, you know, fell into those categories. And the kids talked about how they felt about the change in the neighborhood and how they felt that they couldn't go in certain shops and they couldn't visit, and they knew they were unwelcome.
Then the urban teaching mentees came into the picture, knowing that these my kids had been working on these particular issues, and so they needed to explain to their mentees why these issues were so important to them, why they felt that these were issues that they needed to speak upon or do some type of action upon. They needed to get the Miami University mentees involved in understanding their passion for the issues.
And so the kids talked about that with the students. So they went out and went to a couple of shops. And some of our Miami students came back and we had some of them sobbing, crying. They seen for themselves the undiverse, new wave, glitz and glamour that surround the kids' lives and what they have to deal with living here. The unspoken words, you know, you're not welcome, or we don't want to know you, you know, or you don't fit into our economic side of the show, you know. And so I think that was an eye-opener for the Miami students, which a lot of them said, I've never experienced this. I don't know what this looked like.
When they were doing that, you know, I saw that my students' voices were getting stronger, and then I saw the passion that was coming out of them. I also saw the passion that overflowed into their mentees, that they wanted to help their mentors make a change in their neighborhood.
I always think that when you engage people and when you come, that you have to let your walls down, so then you bring vulnerability. This work has brought vulnerability. People had to let walls down in order to engage in conversations that people just don't have. You know, the students, all the mentors, everybody that was involved always brought vulnerability, to be open, to talk about the ugliness, the things that are learned but are ugly and untrue, and to be willing to unlearn some things that were not true, and to be willing to be open to say, I need to really have a hard look at the facts. I need to go back and look at history and gain knowledge. And so those things were very, very, very important and very enlightening to this struggle. So we all came to a place of vulnerability. We all coming to a place of growing and unlearning a lot of things and relearning things that are actual facts, and where humanity should really come into play.
And I think having the spaces to do that kind of work is really important. I think Peaslee, because of who Peaslee is, its history, where it's located, has the unique kind of opportunity to provide that kind of dialogue to happen, not only for youth, but adults as well.
The Agents of Change is a Peaslee program for youth aged 11 to 15. It kind of comes out of Peaslee's tradition of doing community-based education for social change. So what we do is we work with that age group and try to work with them on developing their voice, right? So different forms of self-expression, introducing them to those forms and figuring out what they have to say and encouraging them to say it, and making sure they understand that it's important to the world and their community.
Children's Creative Corner is an after-school program. I call it an after-school program up on East Clifton.
Recently, a group called North Point has expressed interest in a parcel of land close to Children's Creative Corner. On that land is right now a basketball court, a couple of courts actually, that are really heavily used by kids in the neighborhood. There's also a large garden, a community garden that's run by a separate group, but there's some pretty awesome programming in that garden for kids to learn how to garden, then earn a wage by selling what they grow. And then there's a lot of open space in this rather large parcel of land that is currently city-owned. North Point, what they want to build on this land is high-end homes. So about 21 homes that they would build, and the initial plan that they rolled out to the OvertheRhine Community Council showed no basketball courts and a very tiny community garden. And when many of us who were at that community council meeting asked about the basketball courts and asked, have you checked in with the folks that live directly on the courts and around the kids that use the courts? The response from North Point to that question was, well, we talked to the police. So pretty much from that initial public announcement that there was interest on that land, those of us at the meeting who also help run Children's Creative Corner knew our kids are about to have something go down that they don't know is about to go down. Their courts, where they play, essentially their backyard is at risk of being turned into these homes that they will never be able to afford, and they will lose what they have now.
We talked to them about this plan. We let them know the information that we had learned and tried to talk through it within the scope of what are initial feelings, talking through a lot of the emotional response, which was pretty angry. I mean, it really varied. Some kids were very angry, some kids were sad, some kids immediately were just like, forget it, move on, don't even want to deal with it.
So we spent time talking to our kids, having them, draw their feelings about the court, make some art about the court, what it means to them, what this potential threat means to them. We then worked with other groups like Peaslee and Rothenberg and some Miami students to put together a little gathering of kids that was really driven by the kids themselves in the neighborhood.
The very first action to come out around the courts was that Children's Creative Corner did a little cookout, kind of information session cookout with the kids on the courts and talking to parents about what the proposal was and drumming up some support, and also getting those folks to kind of mobilize to attend the following community council meeting where there was going to be a vote taken on the development proposal.
The big show was at a community council meeting where a bunch of the kids formed this demonstration. They brought basketballs to the community council meeting to bounce outside as people entered, and held signs they made saying, keep our courts, this is where we play, that type of thing.
You know, they might not be able to vote at community council, but they can surely persuade everyone walking past them.
And to see children rise to that occasion was so powerful. So much so, I think a lot of people felt that. I think they really responded to that. They invited them to speak at the community council meeting, and I think the kids felt like they engaged in that process and were heard, at least for that step.
And I know that impacted the vote that night to look into more about, can we do anything to impact that development that wouldn't take that court away? Because those kids spoke bravely, courageously about what that meant to them.
When Agents of Change plugged in, it was like, hey, here's this developer who wants to completely change the space, but isn't willing to meet with the community to see what the community thinks. What's a creative way that we can get community input on what this place means to them? So we had our kids make these giant boards and these petition postcards asking people to write, why is this space valuable to me?
We had kids come up there, play basketball. I passed out buttons, and then I led people, like, we had these cards telling them why the basketball court is valuable to them. And we had a board saying why the basketball court was valuable to them, and they signed the board. So I think doing that makes people think more about the basketball court.
And we collected hundreds of petition postcards and signatures on an online petition. We had our kids go to City Hall, actually schedule some time in the committee that's dealing with the proposal, and speak their truth about how they use the space and kind of testify what the community has said about that space.
I said the basketball court is valuable to me because it brings people together. So, like, if you don't know that person, all of a sudden you start to get to know people and you play basketball with them. So it brings people together that you don't know into your community.
So just seeing them like, you can kind of see their face like, I don't know if I really did anything, but the light in their eyes going, hey, I did something. That's pretty cool.
If a private authority is privileged to make the decisions on what goes on in the public park, and we, members of the community, have no say in what's going on, we have diminished our democracy. We have damaged our community participation in public decisions. And I think the children have learned that. The basketball court example being a real good one, that somebody with private authority, not public authority, not a public hearing where the children could go and see the process, the decision-making process for the courts, but a private process that only surreptitiously did we find out about, and were able to take the children at least to one event where the community council was considering the matter. But the privileging of private authority that not only makes the decisions, closes off any grievance procedures or any recourse or redress, diminishes all of us. I mean, it's not just one little poor community, it's all of us, including the participation in our own governance. And it's not easy to see that as newcomers to the community, as youthful observers, as youthful participants in the democracy, in city governance, in city business. And so periodically there are opportunities like the teachers training program to bring that up for discussion and review and study and action. And social action.
It starts out as about saving our basketball courts, but the people start to understand that it's not just about that, right? That it's about all this other stuff, right? It's about the relationship between people of color and the kind of hammering down of gentrification that's going on in the neighborhood, and that there are people whose lives are at stake here in a really kind of direct, profound way. And so that my hope is that what's going on with the basketball court issue becomes an opportunity for us to have these kind of bigger conversations, and that those conversations go outside of the classroom, goes outside even the school grounds of Rothenburg, and becomes part of the conversation here in the neighborhood.
I was just completely inspired by my interaction and engagement with them, and I think that day and then the subsequent walk and march with them, and then hopefully future engagements will continue to help make me a better community council president, help me take some of that into our community council meetings and share, and let our work kind of be directed by what these bright-eyed youth see in our neighborhood as our most pressing priorities, because they called it right between the eyes.
We don't empower them. They already have all the power in the world. We're just opening up the space for that to happen. And that's where you see the kind of light bulbs go off and this sense of, I am somebody. I got something to say. I can make some kind of a difference here.
Feels awesome to speak what you want to, like, speak for your community. It feels awesome.